Hey guys, welcome back. If you've been following along so far, you'll know that I've been doing a ship fleet replacement for the board game Eclipse, updating those miniatures. And so far we've done our Interceptor, we've done our Cruiser, and now we're getting onto my favorite one, the Dreadnought. Alright guys, this should be a fun one. But if you're interested, next video I'm going to release is basically painting these ones. So if you want to follow along for that, have some fun. Alright, I'll see you next week.
Well, it was at this point I began to realize I was running into a small issue. And that issue was it was fairly straightforward to build the ship from the top blueprints. But then I realized that the bottom of the ship was rather curved, and I completely overlooked the shape. So it proved to be rather challenging. And I decided to kind of turn off the camera to work out what I needed to do.
Jupiter's cock.
2,000 years later.
Okay, guys, here we have our silhouette, and we're looking like we're in a pretty good shape for the Jupiter class. I've gone and spent a little bit of time just trying to finesse and, try and capture the right sort of silhouette. One thing I didn't realize when I first started this ship is that how kind of, curved and kind of elliptical some of the lines were. That kind of threw me for a little while there, actually, kind of just sort of to kind of get these kind of curved shapes. I just didn't initially see that when I first was sort of started the build. You can kind of see it here. You've got, just these shapes. I always knew that the head had this sort of shape, but then like when you kind of see it from other angles, you've just got a lot of, this is a good example, like the bottom of it here. It's just very round and curved off. And I wasn't expecting these sort of shapes when I initially sort of set out. I kind of got focused on the kind of core top elements of it, and it just sort of threw me. So I kind of got into this stuff, and it just took me a little while to get the shapes working. But now that I've sort of fairly in a happy sort of position, it's just sort of a matter of going ahead and detailing it up and, begin to kind of, reveal the bulkhead and get the framework to kind of come through, because that's kind of like one of the more iconic elements about this ship. Moving a little bit away from the Galactica herself specifically, and to kind of just do a variant of my own where I don't want to overexpose the frames that kind of come through. I feel like a part of it is just something about that I'm just not completely attracted to. It just feels like it's a bit too exposed. So I'm kind of looking at a little bit of the deadlock, and I'm kind of getting this impression like, yeah, okay, what if we kind of cover this back up a little bit more? I feel like this is something closer that that appeals to me. I'd rather kind of go towards that sort of look as opposed to the more traditional, just very open and exposed, bulkhead. But, it's a balancing act, so we'll see how we go. I'm going to move on to this section right now, in the top section. So one thing to be kind of mindful about, we've got these cool guns. So I might separate them out. I'm not sure yet. I might have them like a separate piece that we can kind of slot in there. But it's a nice detail to sort of consider when we do it later on. So yeah, let's focus on getting into that, because if we get this sort of section running through here, the kind of like the spine of the ship, then everything else will follow the same sort of, the balance of the lines, the sort of the distance that you kind of set upon will be defined by the first piece that you put down. So if we do the middle, I think it might make our life a little bit easier. So let's get going with that. Let's give ourselves a separate color here. Okay, I'll move my reference to the side here. Alright, so the first thing we've got to do is basically get a nice sort of even line distribution here. Otherwise, it's going to make life challenging when we go to do our ribs, our framework. So let's start to kind of even that out. And that's, in all honesty, I'm just going to eyeball this and keep it simple. So we're going to turn on our edge, and let's go to our top view. All I'm going to do is just want to space them out. Space them out so it feels fairly even. That is the main perspective. Let's keep going. And then we're going to obviously increase them out. So as we kind of increase a few of them, like these ones here, I'm just going to chamfer. And we could probably, add one more. We can begin to fill this out. And connect. Just need to maybe add in a few more over here. So you might notice the double line here. That's just purely because that's the angle where I've got it dropping down to the back of the engines there. So it's just a bit of a reference point for myself, so I don't get carried away and try and, even that out accidentally later on as I kind of begin to add in more lines. I want that to be fairly, clean and simple. So I'm just sort of looking at a space where I want to kind of carve out the guns to rest. So I just want to sort of square that off because it does look like it's pretty square. And then so you can imagine like when I'm pulling these ones in, I'm also got a space here that I'm also going to carve out for the weapons. So make sure I kind of get that right. And again, let's select. So if we do this, then at the back here, it's just going to be very frame heavy. Look, let's try. Try and keep this one a little bit closer to its design. And honestly, if we don't like it, we could just come back and modify it. So let's begin the process. All right, so beveling in. Yeah, that's okay, I think. I have a lot of doubt now. It's the front here I'm happy with. It's something about the back here I just feel like maybe we should try and break it up. Maybe something like this. This might look a little bit more interesting if I do this. That's not bad. Let's consider that as in a good place for our framework. And let's try a version now with the ribs, the frames, because again, really, if I need to update it, it's really updating this piece. But this piece here will be my separate section that I'm used to sort of break out into the lines. So let's just give ourselves a color here, away from the other one. I'm going to make a copy of this in case I need to come back to it for whatever reason. It's there. So the first thing with this one, what we want to do is we're going to collapse our symmetry, and we're going to use our push modifier, and we're going to just shrink it in. Just so we can, extrude it out, and it should sort of give us the desired look. Now with that, let's put in an edit poly. So let's run our line across here. And we're going to loop it. Now let's do a little chamfer. Switch over to try. And we'll kind of get like a consistent thickness with the one over here. Selecting our edges on the bottom in there, and then we can just ring it and get a nice selection. Alrighty, let us ring it. Okay, and now this time, we're going to extrude it out. So we'll use our bevel, and make sure we're on our local normal. Yeah, we don't have to go all the way to the edge. And then we're just going to give ourselves a little taper in here. This is mainly to do with just the 3D printing process, because if I've got too many kind of right angles, there's a risk that it may not print correctly, like it might sort of find itself floating in the layers later on. So this sort of gives it a little bit of a taper. It might make it just a bit more manageable. Okay, so big mistake at the moment I can see is I just haven't got enough of the ribs. That was a little bit of a misjudgment, so we're gonna have to redo that, unfortunately. Let's do that again. Let's try that again. That's not selected, which is good. And now a little chamfer. Oh, let's go to our try one and make it small. Alrighty, now let's do that again. So our bevel, local, and let's control the size. So we just want to pull it down just so it sits inside. Okay. So let's just bring it over to our gray color, and we have our rib section working through there. And now it's just a matter of kind of distributing that same sort of idea across the rest of them. I'm going to come back to the guns. I think I'm just going to keep focusing on building the framework out, getting that settled in correctly, and then we can come back. Okay, so we have our ship coming along pretty well. I'm kind of getting to the point where I want to start looking at some of the bigger details, kind of like the engine booster here. And I just felt like maybe this is a good opportunity to kind of share something. So basically what we're going to do is add this very fine refinement. So I'll pull over the reference for a second. We've got sort of this subtle, groove detail that basically kind of, it's the engine boosters. All we want to try and do is, include some of that details. Yeah, it's a little bit of this, basically, give it a little bit of a chamfer and extrude, and, we can go from there. So if you're in a position like this where you've got, lines across here and you've got to, run it out there and kind of get the lines going, obviously there's lots of ways to do this, and we can kind of, just kind of connect it and keep going. That's one way. The other one I was going to suggest is because, if you do it this way and you just kind of continue to add lines, you lose, your sense of curve. So it just remains flat. So we don't want to do that. We want to kind of keep our kind of subtle curve going around. So best thing to do is to chamfer it. And in doing so, we can basically just push it across. We can sort of see that, okay, it's sort of trying to distribute that out. Let's keep adding in there, and no dramas. So the nice little trick here is let's keep adding in. So we've got some lines here, but obviously, they're kind of keeping even. But the thing is, we want to kind of push it up against it. If we're going to keep pushing it, it basically begins to even out. So this is a good thing. We're getting closer to what we want. But if we notice at the front here, we're kind of now getting a misalignment at the front here because of the basically the chamfer technique that we're using. So if we go down here and we switch it over to try, that basically kind of cleans up that issue. So it kind of keeps it uniformed. We keep our main sort of curve going along there. Very straightforward, very simple. So then let's go ahead and add in some more, because we're going to have it pretty fine and detailed like the way it was in the references. Maybe that's enough potentially. And so the last thing we want to do is so now we've got a double edge on these corners here, so we can go ahead and kind of commit to this, but we just have to make sure that these edges over here, we're going to have to basically select one of them and just remove it so we don't have like a double up. And pretty straightforward here. We'll just clear our normals, no dramas. So that's a really sort of simple technique. And I will continue to kind of go along and do the rest of them. Various numbers, again, I'm not going to be too precise with this stuff, so we'll do the same thing again. So we'll choose our edge in the middle, we're going to loop it, and then we're going to basically start adding our divisions. Again, just sort of eyeball it, make sure you don't go too big, too small. Obviously with this number, you want it to be kind of even with the first starting one. This doesn't have to be precise, and this will just kind of give us a nice sort of even look that we can just continue along. So pretty simple, straightforward. And let's remove that line, same deal, and we can just kind of clear our normal. Pretty straightforward. Well, now we get to the fun stage, which is the back of the ship doing some details. And there isn't really a lot to it that goes in. Don't overthink it. It's basically you start off with simple shapes, circles, cylinders, squares, and some basic lines. And, all you're trying to do is build them up and keep them simple. And as, you kind of get a layer where it feels like it's got a nice coverage, you go back over some of those shapes you just previously laid and you begin to refine those shapes. You add in a little bit more detail. You maybe cut out a cube or a square inside of a rectangle or chamfer an edge. There isn't really, to overthink it. And at this point, the only thing when I was referring to the reference was basically to give me an idea of like the busyness that I was trying to maintain. It wasn't really trying to copy the detail per se. But there's a few key shapes in there that I did reference, which are kind of the longer cylinder shapes. But I'll honestly, a lot of the in-between was really just me, going along and just sort of trying a shape. And if it worked, if I liked it, I would just continue on. So yeah, definitely an opportunity to have some fun and, try some different things. So one of the things that I really enjoy working on is actually including the tubing, because I find that tubing is one of those things where it tends to inspire you. It changes a lot of the way that you kind of look at the detail, and it always has an interesting look. So I get excited because it kind of spawns new ideas about the way you want to connect things. And then naturally, in my head, I'm thinking that, tubes basically lead to, PowerPoint outlets or something as, silly as that. Obviously, it's not a PowerPoint outlet, but, it's the overall impression that it leads somewhere. So tubes is just like a nice way of, giving a nice sort of amount of detail without costing too much. Too easy, guys. I think we are good. I'll do my checks in the background just to ensure that I'm not going to get any failed prints just because of like an open hole or, have an open face somewhere. So I'll do that. That's the boring stuff. And then we'll jump over to the 3D print. So now we're at the fun stage where we actually get to see the results of all the pain and suffering in 3D. And so far looking pretty reasonable. Again, it's a challenge to do it with this kind of color resin. But the moment that we get our grey primer, we'll be able to identify how well the details came through. Try and knock off as many as the support structures to kind of give us a kind of clean result. Knowing full well we can always come back to it once the primer is on, but it's best to try and get rid of that, without having to fuss over it for too long. But yeah, honestly, I just love the way the primer, goes on and gets applied. It just gives it this look where it completes it. You sort of see, the details kind of come through. And it's just a very rewarding feeling. So very happy with the way this is looking and the way it turned out. And honestly, with the pretty few errors, I think if I'm going to do another print, I might just sort of readjust some of my supports to be probably even fewer. I don't think I probably needed as many as I did for this particular one. But very happy with the results. And I'll run a little comparison against with the other ships. One thing I did notice was the fact that it may have been me, just a bit of a human error, but the bottom of the ship itself was missing the element where I wanted to have the stand placed in. So I'll have to kind of reprint that and just to ensure that I had the correct model at the very end. But that shouldn't really be a problem. But yeah, very happy with the way the fleet is coming together. So this is covering the Dreadnought class, and basically we move on now to our final element, which is the orbital for Eclipse Second Dawn of the Galaxy. I don't think I'm going to be wasting a time of video on that. I think I'm just going to get, it's a fairly sort of simple design, something I've got in mind. So we'll just get that done. And we'll move into painting, which is basically where the real fun begins. As always, guys, if you want to grab these miniatures for yourself, you certainly can do that by heading over to my Patreon. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.